Not every destination is meant to be explored. Some places don't welcome visitors. They wait for them. Hidden beyond the postcards and travel guides are locations shaped by silence, by history, by things people don't fully understand. Places where beauty hides danger, where the landscape can turn without warning, and where leaving isn't always guaranteed. Most people travel to escape, but here, you might be stepping into something you can't escape from. This is Midnight Routes, and tonight, we're taking you somewhere you were never meant to find.
There is a village in central France where the clock stopped on a Saturday afternoon in June 1944. Not metaphorically, literally. The cars are still in the garages. The sewing machines are still in the houses. The bicycles are still rusted against the walls. No one came back to collect them, because no one survived to come back. This is Oradour-sur-Glane, and it has stood exactly as it was left for over 80 years. A deliberate wound in the landscape. A nation's refusal to forget. Part 1. The Village Before. To understand what happened at Oradour-sur-Glane, you first have to understand what it was. In the summer of 1944, Oradour-sur-Glane was an ordinary French village, about 1,200 people, a market town in the Haute-Vienne department of the Limousin region, about 20 kilometers northwest of Limoges. It had a tram line connecting it to the city, a hotel, cafes, a church, school children, families who had been there for generations. It wasn't a resistance stronghold. It wasn't harboring Allied operatives. It wasn't strategically significant in any military sense. It was just a village, living out the German occupation the way thousands of French villages were, cautiously, quietly, trying to survive. On the morning of June 10, 1944, 4 days after D-Day, the people of Oradour-sur-Glane went about their Saturday. The children were at school. Market day brought people in from surrounding farms. Some residents from Limoges had come out to the countryside to escape the anxiety of the city. By evening, 643 of them would be dead. Part 2. The 2nd SS Panzer Division. The unit responsible for what happened at Oradour-sur-Glane was the 2nd SS Panzer Division das Reich. They were moving north through France toward Normandy, where Allied forces had landed 4 days earlier. The German High Command needed armored divisions at the front. The Das Reich Division was making that journey, and doing so through a region of France where resistance activity had been intensifying. On June 9th, the day before the massacre, an SS officer named Helmut Kempfe had been captured by French resistance fighters. He was the most senior German officer captured alive in France during the entire occupation. The Das Reich Division was furious. There are competing historical accounts of exactly why Oradour-sur-Glane was chosen. Some historians point to a possible confusion with a nearby village called Oradour-sur-Vers, which did have known resistance connections. Others argue the choice was deliberate and punitive, a message sent to the entire region. What is documented is the order: surround the village, assemble the population, and make an example. Part 3. June 10, 1944. At approximately 2 in the afternoon, soldiers from the Das Reich Division surrounded Oradour-sur-Glane. They blocked every exit road. Then they entered the village and ordered everyone to assemble in the main square. The announcement, delivered through the streets, said they were conducting an identity check. They were looking for weapons and terrorists. Everyone should come out. It would not take long. People came out. Families, the elderly, farmers who had come in from outside the village that morning. Children called in from the fields by the soldiers. The entire population was assembled. Approximately 190 men were separated and marched into barns around the village. The women and children, around 450 of them, were taken to the church. At around 4 o'clock, the killing began. The men were shot in the legs so they could not escape, and then the barns were set on fire. Those who tried to flee were machine-gunned. Only 5 men survived by escaping under cover of the smoke and chaos. In the church, the soldiers placed an incendiary device. When it detonated, the women and children tried to break down the doors. The soldiers fired into the screaming crowd through the windows and doors, and then set the church on fire. 247 women, 205 children. One person survived the church, a woman named Marguerite Roufanche, who crawled through a broken window behind the altar and ran. She was shot and wounded, but survived by hiding in a garden until the following morning. The soldiers then spent the rest of the afternoon and evening looting the village and burning every building to the ground. In total, 643 people were killed. The village was destroyed. The Das Reich division moved on toward Normandy the following day. Part 4. The Aftermath and the Decision. After liberation, the French government faced a choice. They could rebuild Oradour-sur-Glane, clear the ruins, let the village return to normal, help the survivors, there were very few, move forward, or they could leave it. General de Gaulle visited the ruins in 1945. The decision was made. Oradour-sur-Glane would not be rebuilt. It would be preserved exactly as the soldiers had left it, as a permanent memorial and a permanent accusation. A new village was built nearby for people to actually live in. But the ruins of the original Oradour-sur-Glane were frozen in time on the order of the French state. The cars are still in the streets because they have been preserved there by national decree. The sewing machine frames are still in the ruins of the houses. The iron beds are still where they were. The church still stands, its interior blackened, the outline of the altar still visible. Every year since 1945, the ruins have been maintained. Not restored, but maintained. Kept exactly as they were. Part 5. The Trials and the Controversy. The legal reckoning for Oradour-sur-Glane is one of the most complicated chapters in post-war French history. A trial was held in Bordeaux in 1953. 21 surviving members of the unit were tried. But here is where it gets complicated. 14 of the accused were from Alsace, the French region that had been annexed by Germany, whose men had been conscripted into the SS against their will. They were French citizens, technically, serving in a German unit under compulsion. Their prosecution became a national crisis. Alsace threatened to break with France over it. The region's suffering during the German annexation was real and documented. The verdicts were handed down. But weeks later, the French Parliament passed an amnesty law that freed the Alsatian conscripts. Oradour-sur-Glane exploded in outrage. The village's municipal council resigned in protest. The mayor of the new village, who had lost his entire family in the massacre, sent his Légion d'honneur back to the government. The full reckoning that the survivors wanted never fully came. Only one German officer, a man named Heinz Lammerding, who commanded Das Reich at the time and had ordered the reprisals, was ever convicted, and he was convicted in absentia. He had returned to West Germany after the war, ran a successful construction business in Dusseldorf, and died peacefully in 1971. West Germany repeatedly declined French extradition requests. Lammerding is buried in a German cemetery. His grave has been vandalized multiple times. Part 6. What visiting is like today. The ruins of Oradour-sur-Glane are open to visitors. You enter through a modern underground museum, the Centre de la Mémoire, which was opened in 1999. It documents the occupation, the Das Reich division, the massacre, and the legal aftermath. It is unflinching and thorough. Then you walk through a gateway into the ruins themselves. And this is where Oradour-sur-Glane does something that photographs cannot fully prepare you for. It is a complete village. This is not a single building or a memorial site. You are walking down actual streets, past actual houses, into a place where people were having a Saturday afternoon, and then everything stopped. The scale of it is what gets you, because you keep walking and there are more streets, more houses, a barber shop, a pharmacy, a garage with a car inside that has been rusting since 1944. The silence is total. And then you reach the church. The church is the hardest part. The interior is intact, unrestored, blackened, with the broken window that Marguerite Roufanche escaped through still visible. There is a children's pram fused to the floor by the heat of the fire. There is a plaque listing the names. You stand in the place where 447 people died, most of them women and children, and you try to understand what you are looking at. Visiting practices are taken seriously here. Behavior that seems disrespectful is not tolerated. Photography is permitted, but there is an understood weight to the place that most visitors feel immediately upon entering. A silence settles over almost everyone who walks through Oradour-sur-Glane, not the self-conscious quiet of a museum, something more involuntary than that. Part 7. Why it matters. Oradour-sur-Glane is not unique in the history of World War II. There were other massacre sites, other villages destroyed. The war produced atrocities at a scale that the mind struggles to hold. What makes Oradour-sur-Glane singular is the decision to leave it standing. De Gaulle's choice, and the French state's commitment to maintaining it for 80 years, transformed a crime scene into something else. A lesson. A refusal. A place that forces you to reckon with what human beings are capable of on an ordinary Saturday afternoon in June. There is a phrase over the entrance gate. It has been there since the beginning. Souviens-toi, remember. The ruins do not let you forget that these were real people, not statistics in a history book. People who had breakfast that morning and expected to have dinner. Children who were in school because it was a normal Saturday and school was simply where you went. 643 people. In one afternoon. In one village. That nobody had any particular reason to destroy. That is what you are standing in when you visit Oradour-sur-Glane. Not history at a comfortable distance. History with an address. Outreau Oradour-sur-Glane will outlast everyone alive who remembers it firsthand. The last survivors are gone. The last people who knew someone who died there are very elderly now. Soon it will be entirely in the hands of people for whom it is history rather than memory. The ruins are still standing. The cars are still in the streets. The church is still blackened. The French state made a decision in 1945 that Oradour-sur-Glane would not be permitted to quietly disappear into the past. Standing in those streets, I think that was the right decision. Souviens-toi.
Some places don't stay with you because they're beautiful. They stay with you because they don't feel right. And even after you leave, a part of you wonders what would have happened if you stayed just a little longer. There are still places out there no one talks about, for a reason. This was Midnight Roots. Follow for more hidden places, untold stories, and destinations you were never meant to find.